continuing on a little bit with Candida. This just says the normal balance of microorganisms in your life, are going to change. And a lot of times that happens when we take antibiotics. I am not somebody who likes to take antibiotics. Certainly in your life, you need to make sure that the antibiotic is something for bacterial infections and not viral. But the fewer that you take, the better you are. So a lot of times when we take those antibiotics, we definitely have an imbalance of our normal microorganisms. We call that flora. Your gut flora can be thrown out of balance with a lot of antibiotics. All right, and when we experience things like pregnancy or other illnesses, when you have autoimmune disease, a lot of times there's a shift in the microorganisms that we normally have. Candida, again, causes the disease candidiasis, and we just normally call that a yeast infection. This is the throat. This is what thrush looks like. So when you get this white coating in the mouth, this is Candida, but the condition is called thrush. All right, this is ringworm. Fungi can infect your skin, hair, nails, tissues of the body. We've talked about this. You've got your disease sheet. Fungi on the skin can cause ringworm. This is typically what ringworm looks like. It can occur anywhere. It's usually up on the upper extremities, but it can become anywhere. And of course, because it's round like this, it typically looks like a worm. Athlete's foot is actually a form of ringworm. It's, they're all Tinea. It's just a different species, and we know that it's Tinea pedis, and it can occur on your feet, between your toes. All right, and we've talked about this before too. Fungal infections are very hard to treat due to the fact that they're eukaryotes. I mean, they are like us, and their cellular structure is very similar to ours, and so it's very, very hard to kill something that is living inside of a living organism when the structure cellularly is very similar. So again, we have to take those antifungal drugs. They are very harsh on your liver. It's one of those medications that if a topical is not good enough, and they have to give you an internal, they're going to have to check on your liver, because antifungals are definitely processed through the liver. All right, as far as plants are concerned, fungal diseases can affect plants, and a lot of times they're very devastating to agriculture. And one of the most common is Dutch elm disease. Chestnut blight, too. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but chestnut blight is a problem. But Dutch elm disease, this is what it looks like. And it's transmitted by a beetle called the elm bark beetle. And in the U.S., the first cases were reported back in the 1930s in Ohio. And then today, it is so common that it's destroyed about half the elms in North America. So this is a very serious fungal disease that has wiped out a huge population of elm trees. And like I said, chestnut blight is very similar, but it's with a chestnut tree. All right, a disease of peaches called peach scab is caused by a fungus that attacks the peach crop. And in Georgia, every single year, it wipes out millions of dollars of crops. So it is devastating to peaches. Gray mold is a disease of produce that can even grow on refrigerated fruit and causes fruit to spoil. So there's a lot of fungi that can damage fruit. And sometimes it happens during the shipment and storing of the fruit, because anytime that happens, guys, you've got a dark, moist environment. Fungus is going to grow. It just takes a spore, and it's going to grow. So it can damage fruit. And this is the last, and we know this again right here. This white line is an annulus, so this is a mushroom, and sometimes humans accidentally eat these mushrooms. The Amanita, all of the species, I think I gave you Amanita phalloides, Amanita ocracea, all of the Amanitas, and they're in North America, have those toxins, and the toxins, this is your death angel, and the toxins can destroy your liver and cause death. So they're very, very toxic. And also, we talked about the psilocybin mushrooms that carry a powerful hallucinogen. There was a woman, I'm going to tell you this quick story because we're at the end, and I'd be telling you this story if we were in class, but there was a woman in New York, and this has been about 10 years ago now, and she came to New York from Sicily, and she was used to uh, cooking her spaghetti sauce, and all day long. It was one of those where she would steep the tomatoes and the mushrooms, and she would always go out on her property in Sicily, and she would pick these mushrooms and she'd put them in her spaghetti sauce, and I'm guessing they were pretty delicious. Well, she comes to America, and they live in upstate New York, and so she has mushrooms growing, and they look very similar to what she had in Sicily. So she goes out back and she's making her spaghetti sauce, and she puts the mushrooms in her spaghetti sauce. Well, she had picked some poisonous mushrooms, but because they look very similar to the ones that she'd eaten all her life, she had no reason to believe they were poisonous. She was from Italy. She couldn't speak good English, very little English, as a matter of fact. And as the story had it, she had a headache and she didn't eat dinner, but she fed her family. She had 5 kids and her husband and killed them all eating her spaghetti. So, of course, they threw her in jail, and it was just a huge mess. And, of course, she's devastated because she's killed everybody in the family. Naturally, they think it's her because she didn't eat the spaghetti. She wasn't feeling well. And so it took a long time, and translators and lawyers and courts to, declare her innocent. But it's just a unfortunate situation in which she mistook a poisonous mushroom for one that she had eaten all her life. So know that a lot of these are very similar to one another, and there are many, many, many different species of mushrooms, and only a mycologist, someone that is an expert in fungi, is going to be able to just look at one and say, this one is okay to eat. So be safe with your mushrooms. Make sure that you're eating them from a reputable grocery store and putting them in your food, and not just picking them out of the ground, because a lot of times they can be very harmful. And I can tell you that the ones that grow up in your backyard, the ones that are pretty common, they're growing up in your backyard, especially like right now, they're very toxic to your animals. I happened to be, not my daughter, but I happened to be in the veterinarian at one point when a lady brought a box of puppies in, and they had been out in the backyard and they just were um, chewing on those mushrooms, and they all started having seizures. And I think quite a few of the puppies died. So if you see them in your backyard, pick them, get rid of them, knock them down and trash them, because if you've got animals and they get into them, they can be very toxic to animals.